Hello and welcome to Skeptic Hangout, the place where we sit back, relax, and chit-chat about intriguing and sometimes controversial topics through the lens of skepticism. I'm Josh, joined by our possessive co-host Richard, and we're here once again to exorcise some demons with recovering from religion is Helen Green. So grab your pumpkin spice beer, candy corn soda, or English tea as we talk today's topic, exorcisms. This is Skeptic Hangout, Exorcisms.
That was very well done. That was almost
That
like
was
you'd
very
rehearsed
good.
that.
Yeah, and
Josh.
I couldn't think of anything terrifying that went with British people, so you just still get English tea. Because all
Did
you
you
guys,
Earl Grey? Hot.
Picard isn't that terrifying though.
And it's
He was
supposed
as
to
a
be
Borg.
French.
He was as a Borg.
Well, and that was almost a possession, but a robot possession.
It was a
But
robot possession.
I don't think they quite go into exorcism that we're talking about here with that episode. What do you guys think about exorcisms in general? Is there anything that comes to your mind when you think exorcisms?
Helen, you're the ex-Catholic. Let's start with you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so
did you believe this when you were Catholic?
I did not. This is really interesting because like we definitely believed in the devil and stuff like that, but I don't know if it was just my particular brand of Catholicism. Like my dad was very skeptical and gave me a very good like science education. My mom like took us to church, and it was very much like this was going to be our moral fabric for the family and stuff. So I didn't have this idea of like demons and stuff like that, of possession. I don't know. Like it's very weird when I look back and think about it, because when I didn't actually think that I could be possessed by like a demon that would take over my body and control me and stuff like that. But I definitely thought that it could infest your house and cause like bad things to happen. Like it'd be like a bad luck spirit or a bad luck demon. Like it couldn't possess you, as long as you were praying to Jesus and, had the light of God protecting you, it couldn't possess you if you were like a believer, but it would like influence bad things to happen, and stuff like that, like a cause and effect thing,
I guess I have heard of like bringing in a priest to clean a house, and that's like doing an exorcism for a house.
I did it as a witch when I was in a pagan. I used to do house cleansing. So if you use your house cleanse of evil spirits, I'm your girl.
I would have taken you up on that when I was younger, because when I was younger, I used to believe that I lived in a haunted house. Like I actually had to go to therapy because I would see shadow people in my room all the time. I would have loved a witch to come in and get rid of those shadow people, which I'm pretty sure was all in my mind, but I can't say 100% because I haven't been to that house since I was a kid. That may still be infested with shadow people, and I've just like decided I don't believe in those shadow people.
There is still a cowboy ghost that lives in my old house that I'm convinced, like me, because everybody in my family saw him, and it was probably all like groupthink, but there's a part of me I'm like there's a cowboy ghost with a gun that stands at the end of your bed at night. Lives in that house.
Maybe you just had like a John Wayne impersonator that would break in every night.
But no, John Wayne was terrible. I don't want a John Wayne impersonator. He was a terrible human being.
I wasn't saying that as a good thing. That's worse than a ghost having a John Wayne impersonator.
I want like an old Victorian ghost that's very sad that her lover left her and she died of like dysentery or something, like to haunt my house.
So not a racist cowboy.
Not a racist cowboy.
You do touch on an interesting point then, in that it's, we tend to think, and this is probably through the movies, that exorcisms are all through like kind of Christian things, but they're not. Lots of different cultures and like even like neo-paganism, as you mentioned, has like that kind of thing in it. So it's not just a Christian thing. I suppose we're exposed to it more through our like Western media and things as being a Christian thing. And of course, there is exorcism in the Bible. Jesus does call out demons from people and things. So that's kind of where that comes from in Christianity. But what's kind of both of you of knowledge, you've just touched on it a little bit, Helen, of exorcisms in different cultures?
It depends. Like I know I definitely know in like pagan cultures, and keep in mind, like a lot of this, it comes from, especially in like the westernized views of paganism. I'm not going to get into Native American or Eastern ideas of paganism. I'm going to talk from a very Germanic, Eurocentric sort of ideas of paganism, because that's what we tend to think about in the United States, because a lot of that comes from paganism in Europe that's been brought over to the United States. And originally, like there was this idea that there were spirits, not so much demons, because demons are a very Christian sort of concept. There could be bad spirits or mischievous spirits in pagan mythologies. They weren't necessarily bad, but they would just cause problems. You know, they were mischievous, but they weren't like out to like possess you and like murder people or like, you know, make your life like a living hell. You know, you're now looking at like, you know, the people that believe that like demons can infest like objects or people. You're looking at spirits that are causing strife within a community, but they're just like these spirits, or like fairy spirits, especially in like Irish folklore and things like that are causing just problems. They're just causing problems. But they're not, and they can possess a person or they can influence a person. Like I'm sure, like, you know, you've heard like the fairy stories of people being brought into the fairy realm, or they'll sell children,
kids being replaced by mischievous
spirits and
There's
stuff like that.
There's a movie called Hole in the Ground that was based off of, I think, Irish folklore about mischievous fairies. And
I think that like a lot of these ideas come from and like the psychology of it is like these ideas of things happening within the society. And this is just human nature, especially like if things are going, like, let's say there's a famine or people, you know, cattle is getting sick or a plague, and they don't understand how like germs or like things like that. So must be something possessing the community. They didn't do the right type of penance. They didn't do the right type of, you know, worship to the gods, and it's going to cause blights on their crops. It's going to on their people, you know, children, like infant mortality was huge, you know, childbirthing deaths were huge, because guess what? We don't like, you know, modern medicine wasn't a thing. So people died all the time.
Well, wasn't there technically
they didn't
modern
understand
medicine
that, so it has
time?
to be caused by spirits, and the spirit is infecting your body, making you sick. It's causing seizure. Like, you know, you hear people that are have epilepsy, and when you hear the description of demon possession, it sounds like epilepsy. You know, they go into convulsions, you know, and it looks like their body's being possessed. So I think a lot of these ideas of exorcism were just things that were a part of cultural influence to try to explain a scientific thing that was happening, but they didn't know what it was, so they attributed to something external. And then folklore, because and I think that kind of, and now moving into the modern era, like we're starting with paganism, and then that got taken over by the Christians and the Catholics, who are like, no, you can't worship to your pagan gods anymore. You're going to worship Mr. Jesus, and influence that. And those old traditions of body possession and spirits taking over community or taking over person didn't go away. And that kind of got incorporated into the mythology. And then that got brought over to the United States, and it kind of merged into this one lack of understanding of mental illness and physical and mental disorders that actually affect the body and the brain. And people wanting and not being really well versed on these subjects. Because you see it a lot, especially like if you, like in the United States, you still see it in communities, but for the most part, we're always like, no, like you need to go to a doctor, like you need to get this checked out. Mm-hmm. But you definitely see it on people that have like in smaller tribal communities that don't have access to really good information. Like they think that members of their family are possessed by demons or spirits when really they're like sick, or they might have like schizophrenia, or they might have epilepsy, and they contribute it to spirits when really it's just a brain disorder.
Oh, it definitely still happens in somewhat relevant times, because we did an episode where on my other podcast where Richard actually guested on where we talked about the case for Exorcism Emily Rose, which is actually something that took place in Germany.
That
was
story is
a hell
so
of a lot worse than what they showed in the movie, and in the movie they still looked like monsters. But my co-host brought up the fact that his grandfather was performing exorcisms in his own house. So there are people that still kind of believe in these kinds of things.
That story is tragic.
That story is horrific. And the movie was like one exorcism that they tried, and they're like, oh, we tried.
No, it was several.
In real life, this person was tortured for like a year. Yeah, like they
isolated her, and it was like, and that's the thing that's so, and like, I know I said this before, but like, this is a thing that really disturbs me about like religious thought when it comes to mental and physical illness, that these are actual conditions that can be treated, but the thing is though is that when it comes to mental and physical illnesses, sometimes it's a lot of work and years of medical appointments and trying different treatments and all that type of stuff,
and staying active on the treatments. Because I know a lot of, like, in that particular case, they weaned her off the drugs. It's like, oh, it's not working. You didn't give him enough time to let the drugs work. You got to be consistent about that. You can't just go like, oh, there's a little lapse there. That obviously means that it's not working, and demons are the answer to the problem. And that's where, when religion is butting up against science and like solutions that are shown to work, that's when I think religion is harmful. And that's when like the idea of exorcisms, like I can understand maybe like in the way back days before they had explanations for a lot of these things and they'd done their proper research, why an exorcism might happen. Like I'd probably be prone to believing in demons if I didn't know there was a scientific explanation for it. But now that we have the explanations there, we have the treatments out there, or at least we have ideas on how to treat people. And I'm sure there's some people that no matter what, they'll always have problems with. That still doesn't lead to a demon, and you can still get them to live their best life. They don't have to be in the throes of it at all times. And just saying exorcism, and basically everything I've heard about exorcism is abuse. It's the worst possible thing you can do for somebody. I've heard like them say like it'll get the placebo effect, but that'll only work for such a short amount of time. If there's actually a mental problem with them, or even like seizure kind of problem with them, like health problem, then the placebo effect's only going to help for like a little bit, and then they're back under those issues.
Yeah, I think it's worth remembering as well that or mentioning that exorcisms weren't only carried out on people who had mental illnesses. People were being treated by exorcism for homosexuality in the past,
right?
And it's any kind of what was perceived as a malady could have been treated, even to the extent in England they kind of, sometimes if people had colds and were kind of sneezing a lot, they'd drill holes into the skulls to allow the demons to escape that were causing the
How'd that work?
Or you're just having allergies.
Where do
you're
you
just having
drill
allergic
these
reaction to hay fever. It's like, now we're gonna drill a hole in your brain.
I'm only using like 10% of this. I can get a couple holes in there to let the allergies stop.
But it is really interesting. Like we were talking about, this is really funny because we were talking before I came on to this podcast. I was on the RFRX podcast and we were talking about exorcisms and different sort of like ideas of like demon possession and stuff like that. And what was really funny, we were talking about how like, you know, and like witchcraft and the witches and all these different ideas of like being possessed and stuff like that. But like you could be possessed just because you're a woman and you happen to have some mobility, like, you know, your husband died, left some money, you had some political influence, you were, you know, a wise woman in the community that took care of people, you were a man that, you know, was a little weird, you know,
Gosh.
but was a burden on like all these different things that people could say you're a witch for and was possessed by the devil or under the devil's influence, just so because other people in the community wanted to take advantage of you. And like there's all these different social contracts people have, and if the social contract is we are going to be like super religious, we're all miserable because nobody's having a good time, we have to like work hard, and then like if anyone
So if they were
has
doing like
some
interesting
kind of
positions
like
during
any
sex,
kind
they're
of
possessed.
benefit. Yeah, exactly. If you have some kind of benefit where you're not like toiling and miserable as the rest of us, like obviously the devil have some kind of possession over you, you know, and that's just a subtle thing where you see even today where people have, you know, even if they just have anxiety, like generalized anxiety disorder, which I have. I take meds for it. And I try to, yeah, I know, I'm sorry, but I have an anxiety demon inside me. His name is Hector. So you need to be exorcised of that demon, and instead of like getting proper treatment for it, they'll go to like a priest or a pastor, and you know, and they'll go to like one of these events. We've seen them, you know, where, you know, there's like 200 people there all getting exorcisms, you know, and it's groupthink, and it works for like a day or two. They're calm, you know, because they've had this huge emotional release.
And
2 days go by, and then the anxiety comes back, and they think the demon didn't get exercised. And really, it's like, no, you have a chemical imbalance in your brain, and you need a therapist and some drugs. Or you might not even do drugs. You just might need therapy, whatever it is.
Yeah, you just need to know it's not a demon in you.
You just need to know it's not a demon. It's just because it's your brain, and brains are weird.
Yeah, exactly. People don't understand how weird their brains can go, because I hang out in the horror community, and I've had a lot of people I've talked to giving me their experiences with ghosts or demons or whatever, and so many of them have had that experience where they've just heard their name whispered to them and nobody was around. Like that's proof of a ghost or a demon is in their house, and like, no, the brain's misfiring, and it's just like auditory hallucinations happen to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've heard my name plenty of times.
Me too.
So I assume I'm not just going like, oh, a demon's talking to me, or it's probably my roommate telling me to like turn the music down, but it's probably definitely not a fucking demon. But people believe it because people don't realize just how stupid their brains can be working on these things. It's funny the conclusions that people will jump to, even if you provide it. They've taken like an emotional investment in saying this house is demon haunted or like possessed by something, and they don't want to give that up because it's almost, I think part of it is it makes their life more interesting if there's a possibility of demons, even if it's scary to them. Because they've told me this, and they've been like, I almost shit my pants. It was the scariest thing that ever happened to me, hearing my voice or my name out of nowhere. But they're also still telling it to everybody, and you can see like they're getting energized by telling these people that they've had a possession or a ghost demon experience kind of thing. So sometimes it's just people being dumb and not realizing it, or not being dumb, being gullible.
Well, like Stanley Kubrick had this, like he even said in one of his interviews when he was talking about The Shining, which is a great movie, but he was talking about how people want, even if it's scary with ghosts and demons, it gives the promise of an afterlife. Like because it really boils down to the fear of death. that we don't know what's going to happen after we die. So even if it's demons or ghosts or something spooky, because that's why a lot of us are drawn to supernatural horror and ghost stories and stuff like that. Like even as an atheist, I'm like, there's a part of me that was like, wouldn't it be cool if there was something that happened after we died? Like, cool.
Oh, yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
there's a little part of me that wants to hold on to that, even though it logically doesn't make any fucking sense. But it's a nice feeling, and that gives us a little bit of comfort, because that's was one of the things he addressed in The Shining, because it is like, is this all happening because Jack Torrance is going fucking crazy, or is this a ghost, you know, because of supernatural forces? And that's what he wanted the audience to question, because
that's one of the reasons why it's better than the book. It's one of the rare adaptations that's better than the book, because he tapped into that curiosity of the mind of like, does it happen or does it not happen? I used to ghost hunt when I was younger, because I believed in these younger me was dumb, and I believed in all this kind of stuff, especially since when I first moved into a new house, that was when I got my first.
You weren't dumb. You were that was the information you had at the time.
I was dumb. I still am dumb, but I was dumb. but I believed in ghosts because like the first time a night at a new house, that was my first episode of sleep paralysis I ever got, and I had like the whole room light up and like figures in my room. Like, oh, this was me at 17 believing in ghosts, because I actually saw something visually and I didn't realize what it could be. Like I couldn't move and there was stuff going on in my room. Like it was crazy to me. And then eventually I found out about sleep paralysis and started going down more of a skeptic take on things, and started to learn, oh, my brain was just misfiring, and it does it way too damn often now. But it's hard to get. It took me a little while to get myself to stop thinking like that. It was probably like I'd heard about sleep paralysis, and it wasn't like instantly like, no, that wasn't what my situation was. My situation was there was an actual ghost, and I didn't even believe in an afterlife, so I don't understand what I believe those ghosts were, but it was something unexplained for me. I always like to try to be smart. Like, you can't be an atheist. It's not, the atheists are wrong, the theists are wrong. It's something we can't even think of that's happening there.
We're pushing up against another reality, man. That was another one that I used. Like we're pushing up against between two different realities.
I was just thinking, actually, when Josh was telling that story about that's a nice segue into the kind of the evolution of possession stories, where a lot of people now, rather than demon possession, kind of go for the alien thing. And sleep paralysis has been related to that quite often. And as Helen has just said, one of the kind of ideas about these beings, and as to why we don't just see them flying down in those flying saucers and coming into invading our house like regular invaders and taking us away physically, it's like a multi-dimensional thing, and that's why they can do it so discreetly and just take the particular person they want to without anybody else noticing. And
right,
you know,
they're really
excuses for we go to a lot of elaborate kind of excuses to try and explain these things if we don't understand them. And I've had sleep paralysis. I've had it. I've not had it very severely, and I've not had it very often.
I've had it a couple times in my life,
but it's a very scary experience, and when you understand what it is, it makes a hell of a lot of difference than your mind trying to figure out what it is.
Well, I can understand people thinking that there's a demon inside them. Like one of my most recent ones was the most vivid one I've had probably ever. It was only just like a couple of weeks ago, and I actually saw, like, I've heard of the old hag syndrome, but I've never actually seen it. I actually saw something like weighing on top of me, like a woman weighing on top of me. Like, if I didn't know better, I would have thought that, I'm about ready to get possessed by this demon that's like crushing my chest at the time. It was vivid as hell, but like knowing how your brain can misfire helps with that kind of thing. I'm amazed you brought up aliens, because I don't think of aliens as something you would exercise. Like E.T. looked pretty thin. I don't think he needed that much exercise.
It is really funny that you did bring up aliens, though, because like I think that's I'm using the term evolution loosely in this context, but like, because we're moving away from supernatural stuff, okay, we're going to move to aliens because because people, like, if we've watched Ancient Aliens, which is a trip. I love Ancient Aliens because everything is, it's like, what if so and so, and what if this is always posed as a question so they can get away with deniability because they're not claiming anything, which I love.
Yeah.
But there are always like this idea that there's these things existing, you know. And I'm like, listen, do I think aliens exist? Yes. Do I think that they're visiting people, taking them away from their homes and doing weird butt stuff? No, I don't think
they're
that's
all
what's
about
going.
fellatio.
Or whatever they're doing. But I think that it's the natural evolution of people that want to believe in the extraordinary.
No,
I think because
absolutely.
that makes life more interesting. It does. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like, do I want to live in like, I thought that when I was going to get the COVID vaccine, I would get X-Men powers. Did I get it? No, but it'd be really cool if I did.
It's because you got the wrong vaccine. The other one gave you the right ones.
But I get that urge for wanting really cool things or something that is outside of our mundane experience.
And it's like aliens have probably taken over as like a lead explanation on these things because while we still do have like the Christian superstitions, it does seem like the Catholic Church and a lot of those places are trying to like back away from like exorcisms and stuff like that for the most part, because it doesn't seem very good PR from, or that's what I've heard in horror movies. Everything I know about Catholicism, I know in horror movies, but it seems now aliens are becoming like the main thing for why weird shit's happening to you when you're sleeping instead of demons all the time. Not that there aren't people that don't believe it, but as technology gets better, probably aliens are going to start taking more and more of that spot because our brains are going in a more technological direction than in a mythological direction with this kind of thing.
And I blame, I'm sorry, Richard, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you go.
I blame science fiction a lot for this. Like, I'm sorry. Like, if you look at like Altered Carbon, you know, other like, you know, superhero movies, science fiction movies, it's all this idea that you can tap into the brain and you can alter the brain and you can make the brain experience different things that it wouldn't experience other than our own consciousness of events. And because like, you know, if you've spent any time on conspiracy theories,
I go into those
fall down those rabbit holes. Whew. They get these ideas that they think that Hollywood and the story and science fiction are actually telling things that are actually happening, and they think that it's real.
Well, there's codes in everything that's released.
Codes and everything, and we've moved from the religious idea of possession into like aliens and science being able to invade the brain and take over the body and give us altered perceptions of things and stuff like that.
I mean, it is definitely kind of almost demonizing science and like technology and stuff like that. So I guess it could be it. I didn't think we'd go in this direction of the conversation, but it definitely is evolving science into being the demon that's taking over their lives instead of like an actual demon.
Right. And that's the thing that I find so troubling, because I have a layman's understanding of science. Like I am not an expert on a lot of things, but I do trust the people that are working in these fields to explain to me how certain things are in the realms of like neuroscience, psychology, biology, all that type of stuff. Like I trust them because they're the ones doing the hard work to say like, hey, you know what? And I've read a lot of boring papers. I have. They're not a fun read, but I get more information, and because I can vet sources and I can do, because like one of the benefits of going to college is you know how to vet sources, you know how to look for the information, and you learn how to look up information. But for the average person, You're not going to get that. You're not going to learn how to vet sources and understand these things. And I think that the fantastical, it is more interesting. And I'm not going to say that. That's why I immerse myself in pop culture, because it is way more fun. But do I believe that pop culture is telling me about the scientific reality of the world? No. Nope. Sorry.
Yeah, and the problem is so much of it's demonized in movies. Like there's so much of technologies going into scary areas that are gonna destroy the world. Like I watch a lot of sci-fi horror, and that's that kind of thing about that. AI
you're
is
speaking my own language,
people.
Josh. So,
what's that?
I love sci-fi horror.
So. No, there's all kind. Like Ex Machina was about AI, and that's like an area that they're starting to freak out about. And we got Alexa going into, I just activated mine, going into our homes and stuff like that. And that's scaring people. So it's the reason why people are so, well, I'm not going to pretend I know the reason why. One of the reasons why I think people are getting so freaked out about scientific direction is because everything they haven't been taught good epistemology to separate what's just like a fun, cool premise for a movie and something that could actually happen in real life. Because almost all these scary sci-fi horror movies, they're not really that plausible. They're all just like going off of like technology that probably will never reach those kinds of heights, but they can demonize it and freak people out about it. And then like they'll see it, like you were saying, they'll see that in those conspiracy theory forms as where we're going, or hints at where technology is. And even in those movies, sometimes they're just looking in the background and like, oh, I saw 3 words there. That means something. I'm going to take this into a completely different location than anybody ever thought about, but it makes sense to them because there are leaps made in those forms. I'm not going to pretend everything's logical. People need to be shown how to work skepticism and epistemology to get past these things. That's how I got past thinking about ghosts and crap like that, is because I was taught skepticism. It does, if you're not taught how to evaluate claims and look for different proven biases, there's always going to be those leaps in logic that'll make sense to some people, that not to people that know how to evaluate it. Like my friends started coming to me when I think it was Wayfair Furniture was getting a couple of my friends got into that, and I was just like, they were saying that there's human trafficking because of the way they were marking up the prices of the furniture. And I'm like, how the hell did you get human trafficking from overly expensive furniture? They even came up with it. It's just like, we didn't think people would buy this at this price.
Did you miss this in the UK?
I've missed this. Yeah, you're going to have to explain this one.
So there was a conspiracy theory. There was a bunch of, this was like, what, last year, Josh? Was it last year or 2020?
It was 2020, I think.
Okay, it was during the pandemic. I know it was during that.
People were already
Wayfair
crazy.
had female names for their furniture. So let's say that you're going to buy a dresser, and it is named Ophelia, and it is where on one website you would spend $500 for it. On Wayfair, you pay $700. Okay, and because there was this weird conspiracy that like actually people were being like someone by the name of Ophelia was being transferred, a silent auction. So they priced it at $700, and you could auction it. Like that was the starting price. And actually you were going to buy someone named Ophelia rather than buying the dresser.
And there was no evidence other than the fact that there was no weird prices and
other than female names. Interesting names.
Yeah, this is a prime example, I think, of where critical thinking is absolutely vital. And you know, I was going to say not to go down the education route, but of course I'm going to go down the education route. That's what I do. And, you know, I was had the privilege of being on the Recovering from Religion show. Helen got me on there a couple of weeks ago. That's why I was missing from our podcast, by the way, because I had better things to do. And
yeah, you trade us for a different podcast.
And Josh, I'm probably going to have you do a presentation too at Recovery, like on our podcast.
Yeah, I'll schedule it on a day where I don't betray Skeptic Hangout, though.
Yeah.
That's all I banged on about on there too, and it's all I talk about on the non-profits. It's because it's very, very important, and we need better education. We need to introduce critical thinking into people, and it's not a bad thing. People see it as kind of, well, why would I want to do that? Why would I want skepticism? I saw a post on I think it was the Skeptic Generation forum the other day or a few weeks ago, and somebody outright said, I don't like skepticism. I don't trust skepticism. And it's like, this is, wow.
Is that being skeptical of skepticism?
I think it was way beyond skeptical. And I don't understand why it would be so aversive to anybody. It can only get you thinking better. It can only get you going. If you care about truth, if you care about what is true,
you pray.
Critical thinking and skepticism is vital. It's vital to kind of understanding what is likely true. And if not, you do end up. Shall we bring this back round to the topic that we were supposed to be talking about?
Yeah, we're getting to the last.
But that's the thing, though, is that that leads back to like talking about possession and the things that exist about our brains and all this type of stuff. Is because like I would rather be told a painful truth than a beautiful lie, because the more that I learn about the world and how our brains work and socialization and groupthink and all these different things, it makes me go, wow. I'm like, fuck. I'm like, we are living in this age where that information is easily available, and we're constantly improving on that information. And I think that's really important, because I would rather someone who believes that someone's been told that because of the fact that they have a sneezing condition, like they have allergies, they're told that, they're possessed by a devil, where I can give you an antihistamine and go, you know what? Take this. And they don't seize it anymore. And I'm like, no, but you're not possessed by a devil. You just have an allergy. Like, we have the science to explain those things now.
Or you just suppress the symptoms of the devil, and the devil's still inside.
I know.
You just can't seize
it has
anymore.
to be, it's suppressing Hector.
Exactly.
His name is Hector. Hector is the allergy demon. You gotta suppress him, and the only way you can do it is through Benadryl. But like, that's the world we're living in, and I find it so disturbing. Like I said, like, I keep saying that I want people, if you believe in a God, if that's helping you be a better person, I think that's wonderful. But as long as you're not hindering somebody else, and if it's keeping from so-and-so from getting some Benadryl to stop their allergies, instead of going through fucking exorcisms, which are traumatic and very detrimental and can be very abusive and horrible to somebody else, where you just give them a fucking Benadryl. Skip them the fucking Benadryl, man.
I've heard of parents having exorcisms performed on their kids because they suddenly became atheists, and they're like, oh, this is the demon taking them away from religion and stuff like that. And it was on one of the college shows. I can't remember which one, but they felt horrible about it. It's like, they're saying, the parents are basically saying, your beliefs aren't your beliefs. It has to be a demon. Who you think you are is not who you are, kind of thing. And that coming from your parents are forcing a exorcism on you just because you don't believe anymore, I can imagine that could be fucking traumatizing to them. The person on the call, if they were sincere, which they tend to think that most of the calls I've heard on those shows are sincere. But yeah, it's bad. It sounds traumatic.
We've had people like on recovering from religion on the ACA Discord have told similar stories, that they feel that they can't come out because they feel that if they say that I'm a skeptic, not even they're atheists, that just the fact that they're a skeptic, that they'll have to go through like an exorcism or some kind of like deconversion program, which is so distressing. Because for us, we're like, well, do what's going to keep you safe, like, and they want to come out, they want to say that, like, I don't believe in this anymore, this is bullshit. And I'm like, you are 15 years old.
Oh yeah,
you have to be at home for at least another 3 years. And I hate to say it, but you might be at home longer if you do not have the financial capabilities to move out.
Yeah, with this economy, that's
Yeah,
probably more than 3 years. For
like
a
we say
15-year-old.
that, like when you go to college, but some people live at, like my son, he's living with us. He's 18. He can't afford to live on his own. So he lives here. I don't care. I want him, I eventually want him to move out and have his own life. But if he, how long he needs to stay here, he needs to stay here. And a lot of these kids are stuck in situations where they might be called out saying that they're possessed for being queer, or for just saying that I'm an atheist or I'm a skeptic. I don't believe in this anymore. And because we get these calls, we get these conversations with these people. They're like, or even people that are in marriages, or in relationships with their families, that are like their spouse is 100% in believing in devils and demons and stuff like that. And they say like, I don't really buy this aspect of our religion. And unless you're 100% in, it's not even that you're just questioning one thing. They will think you're possessed. They will think the devil has got you. And they want you to go through a deconversion process. They want you to go through an exorcism or whatever this is. And that's the thing that is so fucking terrifying, because people like make light of exorcisms. Like they see like these YouTube videos of people like, going through like exorcisms and stuff like that.
I've heard some audio and some of it sounds pretty intense.
Yeah. But the thing, I just see people suffering. That's all I see. That's what I see. I'm just like, you're actually someone that probably has some real distress going on in your life, especially the people that have, like, the thing, mental illness is not seen. So that's harder to detect. The people that actually have like physical illness that you can actually see, and people say that they are possessed, like the devil has control of your body, and then they do like a tap on the forehead and say like the devil's out of you and all this stuff, and they're suddenly going to be cured. I'm like, no, motherfucker. I'm like, you cannot cure paralysis. You cannot cure this. Like, that is not going to happen. And like, it reminds me of, I was watching, I can't remember the name of the Netflix series, but there was this person that had like a physical disability, and they were infected by a vampire, so they healed. And then, but the thing is though, is that like, because they were infected with vampire blood, that's why they healed. It wasn't because of some godly thing that happened.
Well, vampire blood is science, at least.
I know. Well, yeah. So, but like, this is the type of things that you see where people think that is something that's miraculous, or even because like the brain is a powerful thing. It may provide temporary relief. It may provide things that seem miraculous, but after those chemicals wear off, you're stuck back into your brain state, the physical state that it just is. And then the person has guilt. They feel like, oh, I didn't believe enough. I didn't do penance enough, or whatever it is. And that's the thing that makes me super concerned and worried about that type of thing, because the message is wrong. The message is just like, you were dealt a really crappy hand. The universe doesn't care about you, and you were just dealt this crappy hand.
Exactly.
There are people, experts that can help you.
Exactly.
And the system, especially living in the United States, is against you. but there is help out there. It might be hard to get the help, but I think that's the thing that's frustrating to me, because of the system that we live in, that people are looking for, because of the system, people are looking for easy solutions, whether through spiritual or pseudoscience or whatever it is. They're looking for those solutions because the regular thing that should be there to support them isn't.
Exactly.
And that's the thing that's so frustrating, because you see it. That like that person could be helped if they just had the right medical care. and they just had the right education, but oh, guess what? We don't live in a system that supports those things. And that's why you see things about possession and, you know, you're influenced by demons or spirits or whatever, because that's it. Those are easy fixes.
Yeah, you don't have to be an expert in order to exorcise somebody. You just need to have watched The Exorcist a couple of times and throw some holy water on somebody, and that's a quick solution. We're wrapping up towards the end of this episode. Any final thoughts, Richard?
Yeah, I'm interested in how we combat it and how we not individual exorcisms, but the kind of the idea that people can be possessed at all. And you know, to me, it all comes back down to education. We need to get people to think and understand for themselves, using the correct research methods rather than, you know, so many people will say on the internet, go and do your own research, but they're talking about like really crazy stuff. And it doesn't doing research in and of itself is not a cure to anything, because you need to do the right, correct. Yeah. You need to have the right kind
chemicals
of research.
and the tubes and not just Google.
Yeah, you need to understand how to research and how to do that. Get the right sources of information and be properly informed about something. Because if you consider just watching a YouTube video research, then, you know, that's part of the problem. That's not the solution. So we need education. Government should be putting money into education, into critical thinking. It should be done from an early age. And, you know, this is the best way to combat anything like this.
Yeah, sounds good. Just want to get you to give any final thoughts, and then go ahead and plug Recovering from Religion one more time.
Like, I'm going to piggyback off what Richard said. Like, you don't need a formal education. You don't need to go to college. You don't need to have a secular education, but you do need to be educated on how to research, how to vet sources. And that is available on the internet. It is. It's like, we live in a wonderful age, but you have to know how to vet information and how to get back up the sources that you're looking for. Because if you get to the point that you believe that people can be possessed by demons or spirits, and that is the cause of mental and physical illness, that's a problem. Because there are real mental and physical illnesses that people suffer from, and science, real medical science about people that care and have done the research and want to help these people. That is what you should be looking for. Because it doesn't deal with just possession. It deals with pseudoscience and people like using made up home things for remedies and all this type of shit that doesn't benefit anyone. So please vet your sources. Please learn how to look these things up and learn the proper way to vet research, because that's going to benefit not only you, but your family and the people you care about the most. Anyway, on top of that, if you are looking for better ways to be a better skeptic, if you're looking for ways to learn how to do these things, please contact Recovering from Religion. You can contact us through 186 I Doubt It. That is a way for you to talk to a live agent on the phone, or you can go to our website, www.recoveringfromreligion.org. You can chat with one of our agents. They're trained to be a sympathetic, supportive ear that you can just vet. If you want to chat, you can schedule chats. Check out our resource page. If you want to donate, we will take money. We love money. So if you have $5 burning in your pocket and you want to donate to us, we will take money too. So please consider just checking us out. Even share subscribe, whatever people do, like, do that as well, because that gets our message out and helps more people. So that is appreciated as well. Thank you again for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it.
We had fun on this one. We were a little off topic, but it was definitely a fun conversation.
They're the best ones.
And I'm starting to believe in the devil with how fucking hot it is in this room. I'm sweating so hard on camera, but that's besides the point. We gotta Remember to keep questioning
to interrogate your beliefs.
and stay skeptical. Thanks again.